What happens when you make a catch-up zone for an MMO and you do not care whether people need to be online in 5 weeks' time grinding their ass off? Doesn't that sound cool? Well, I found it. Let's take a look. Completely optional, an entire fully fleshed out story, immediate, useful power gains for the player, completely optional, a fast track to level alts, a spectator single player mode that passively encourages supporting players and creating a positive environment. 3 optional raids, rewards every single type of useful currency in the game constantly, and did I mention, completely optional. Let's head into Bozja, shall we? So I had absolutely no idea what FF14's Endgame was like. Beyond, when MSQ? It was the most constant question I was asked, certainly from other WoW guys, is what is the endgame like? Every time the subject came up, it was met with completely contrasting views from my live audience. Bozja is awful. Bossier is absolutely amazing, and so obviously I need to find out for myself. So what is Bozja? It's essentially the catch-up zone for FF14. Similar in concept to like the Isle of Thunder, Legionfall, Nazjatar, Mechagon, etc. I've made it a point to investigate a lot of extra content before moving on to whatever the next FF14 expansion might be, to just get as close as possible to the original experience as I can. One thing I did pass on was something called Eureka. This was the Stormblood extra catch-up zone, and well, you guys were not really happy that I skipped it, and we're not going to let that happen again. So I was spammed to go and check out Bossier. Now, my impression leading into this, that Bossier, and this is based off what people were telling me, had some sort of story similar to what we would expect from WoW, which introduces you to the new zone, and then it turns into a super grindy experience, which you would find in a lot of typical Japanese MMOs. Needless to say, I wasn't exactly excited. I thought it was going to be like an hour of story, and then it just leaves you there to get on with your grind, do your daily quests, whatever it might be. So, thankfully, that is not what it is. Firstly, the story is completely fleshed out and varied as anything else in the game, including the MSQ. It's engaging, has twists and turns. It's not voice acted, but it brings in new interesting characters, familiar faces from the rest of the game, while also trying to tie in to whatever the current world events are happening elsewhere. So, toying with premonitions, summoning long-lost deities, the oppression of the Empire, all the usual stuff is here and done really well. I was amazed that even when a solid group of players allowing me the most speedy path through the story, it took me nearly 4 days of around 8 hours each just to complete the story. It's a big one, and it's good, and it was well worth the time investment. But that's not my focus here. I want to talk about systems. Systems. And systems has become such a horrible word because reality, what we're actually saying is systems done badly. Systems in games are totally fine. Every single video game in the world runs on its systems. That's how it works. But when systems are implemented to be obnoxious and annoying and to string you along and to be just carrots on sticks, that's where it becomes a problem. My years and years of experience when it comes to extra catch-up zones and new casual content boils down, before I even touch it, to a few questions. 1, how long will it take me to grind this motherfucker out until I actually get the 1 or 2 things I actually want? 2, how long per day is it going to take me to get my daily grind complete? And 3, is it mandatory? These are the same questions that people are currently asking about the upcoming 9.2 patch for Zereth Mortis in World of Warcraft, because it's going to feature double legendaries, and immediately as soon as you hear that, you think, okay, I'm going to have to grind this thing. It doesn't matter whether it's good content or not, and that's the really sad thing. It actually doesn't matter, because you're forced to do it regardless. If you want to be even moderately up to date with the video game, you want to have these ludicrous power gains that you can get, you're going to have to be there. And it just puts a sour taste in your mouth before you even step foot in the place. It could be the most amazing place in the world, and that would just be a benefit. And that's the sad thing. Because if it's less than great, you're going to get annoyed really goddamn quickly because you have to be there. So how amazing was it that as soon as I did my first Bossier encounter, I saw that I got several things immediately. Like, immediately. I got huge amounts of experience. The zone is scaled, so you can come on lower or higher level characters to level and do whatever the hell you want. The second thing I got was tomestones, used to buy the latest and greatest gear from a vendor. So many, actually. I got so many tomestones from just doing the story that I could gear my alts that I haven't even rolled yet while I was playing around. I regularly capped out my stones and just bought gear for other classes that I hadn't even tried yet. So I would have gear just waiting for me whenever I got around to doing it. And then I got tokens. These tokens gave you enormous power buffs immediately. Extra mobility, extra DPS cooldowns, passive huge health and defensive gains. And the passive buffs, like doubling your HP and defense, they don't even expire. They're just active until you finish your gaming session in the zone or it eventually resets. And a lot of the like DPS cooldowns, even the mega ones, they come with like 99 charges. So you could just use one of these for days, literally days. They come back. As soon as you step back in the zone, that's right back with you. Until eventually you've spent 99, but by then you've probably collected like a dozen of them, so you're never going to run out. And then there's the extra bonus stuff. So I was getting these clusters, which buy you much faster mount speed in the zone, and ironically, it's one of the cheapest rewards you can actually buy. They want you to get this really quickly. There's new dances, new emotes, mounts, minions, and even more powerful buffs to use. The next thing I got was memories, which then gave me like big visual relic weapons. And the last thing I got was loot boxes that can contain mounts and pets and consumables. So you'd know if you've done World of Warcraft, if you hit Exalted, you get a bonus box. Well, you get these just dropping all the time. And by the end of each session, I had like 60 of these to just gain a bunch more stuff. And the cool thing is, the minions and the transmog items that I got from these, they're not bound to your character. So if I'm not interested in them, or I get repeats, I could just sell them. This, my friends, is what happens when you really, really don't care whether players want to engage in your brand new piece of content. I'm not saying that that's things that we can just throw away, but when you remove two factors in the design brief, when you're sitting down to write out how this new content is going to be, and you take out these two factors, and one is make sure the player has to take part. We're making this content so players have to take part in it. Otherwise, it's a waste of money. It's a waste of resources. So we have to find a way to make sure players take part. They are forced to take part. And two, make sure they're still taking part in a week's time, in 2 weeks' time, in 3 weeks' time, in 4 weeks' time, in 5 weeks' time, in 6 weeks' time. Otherwise, they'll complain for a lack of content. So we have to make it a long-ass road to travel, and we have to make it that they have to be there. When you take those two things out of the design brief, when you take those two things off the table, you just create fun. You just create fun on its own merits. It stands on its own 2 feet. And you also remove the idea of, well, we can't give too much too quickly, otherwise what's going to make them come back? We can't just overwhelm the player with cool stuff because then they'll just be like, oh, well, I've got everything now. No, you take all that away and say, have a blast. Have a blast. It's so freeing. You can feel the freedom when you're playing it. You actually feel that freedom every single time. You feel that it's like, oh, cool, I can buff myself up to the stars and go crazy. Instead, you also remove the idea of drip feeding rewards. We've all been there, especially my WoW audience, where you have had something like an emissary quest or a renown chest to get, and you go to a zone. And what the first thing you do is you open the map and you check which of the 4 quests you need to do are actually worth your time. And there are occasions, and we've all been there, where you look at it and go, there is actually not 4 things in this zone that are worth my time. There really isn't. Some of them are going to give me 35 anima. Some of them are going to give me 100 gold or 250 gold, and I have a lot of gold. Some people don't, some people do, but this is why you're judging it on a person-by-person basis. You scan that map, you mouse over everything, you're like, pet food charms. And then there are those times where it's so bad that the big brain play that we're going to do is we're going to try and save it over 3 days to maybe that over the course of the 3 days before that big chest quest disappears, maybe there'll be 4 things in total that are worth my time. What else impressed me is the zone does a lot of really subtle things to make you feel like you're part of an MMO. Regularly, you have these critical engagement spawn. That's what they call them. These are literally outdoor 48-man world bosses. They reward a hell of a lot more of the stuff that you're already getting. The big buffs I mentioned are optional, so you can be super powerful in these encounters. And if you use them, it can be quite hard to die, which might sound to some of you like, oh, so it's just easy mode then? No. Now, the encounters do vary in difficulty from easy to one called Red Chocktober, which will just decimate a ton of players. But the trick here, as I said, it's not about dying, is that they use vulnerability stacks to assess you. Alright? If you get a mechanic wrong, or even several, it probably isn't going to kill you with these massive HP and defensive buffs that you get, but you will get a stack of vulnerability. This allows weaker or first-time players an awesome chance to just learn and practice without just lying on the floor and watching everybody else do it. No one cares at all if you get 4 or 5 vulnerability stacks if you're still not dying. It doesn't matter at all. But what you get to do if it's your first time or you're not a particularly good player is you get to keep playing and learn and practice and learn and practice. And over time, what you need to do is not get any vulnerability stacks at all, because then that can spawn a duel. Now, these are basically Mage Tower really difficult single-player encounters. They're really, really hard. I've watched several people complete these, and more often than not, people fail, just like they would do in a really hard solo piece of content. And what actually happens is you prepare for them. You start learning them. You start studying them. You start preparing the appropriate potions and buffs that you want to take with you when you go into this encounter, right? Now, here's the really, really, really cool bit. They're open world. People can come and watch you. And in fact, you're encouraged to do that. And you're also encouraged to support that player, to give them positive vibes, to cheer them on. It very much reminded me of like when Thunderen was spawning in WoW Classic. And you would see across the plains, guilds and all these people charging across the battlefield to go and watch a duel. So every time you would do one of these critical engagements that can actually spawn a duel, you would wait to see if the duel spawned. Did someone do well enough in order to spawn one? And then it appears. And then you head over and you see who's going to take part, and you check whether they're buffed themselves up. Are they ready for this? Are they going to be good? And you cheer them on. And why do you do this? Because if they win, you get a buff that literally like doubles the metal rewards for you for the next hour. Doubles your rewards if they succeed. So you're then encouraged to create a positive player environment, because you want those people to succeed. You want to get yourself that buff. And therefore, everybody's winning. And you feel bad if they lose. You don't shit on them because it's really, really hard. And you know it's really hard. But if they succeed, you're running up, you're patting them on the back, you're cheering them on, and then you're off and you're getting yourself all these extra bonus rewards. It's such a cool way of passively creating a positive environment. You're encouraged to take part. Even if you're not good enough to do this, doesn't matter. You still want the other person to do well at the same time. On top of all this, 3 48-man optional raids where you can, once again, use all your mega DPS buffs and just have a blast. They have their own gear, an extra savage raid for some really juicy items. Again, entirely optional. 3 raids, totally optional, totally distinct from everything else. They're there if you're interested, if you enjoy raiding or you just want to see the new raid. If not, you have literally no reason to ever step foot in the zone, and you will just not get 3 extra raids. It's as simple as that. The end game of the zone is where people will have different experiences with this, and why I was told a lot of people, by a lot, and I mean a lot of people, that Bossier was crap, and it was just a massive grind, and it wasn't. Don't even check it out, Mike. Don't even go and look at it. Now, this is because you have finished the story, you have reached your max rank, and I did that in 4 days. Okay, so that's for some players, it's literally 4 or 5 days worth of content, depending on how hardcore you push it, but that's going to be about it. And for many players, you'll go, 4 or 5 days? That sounds kind of shit. And some people really want to grind out a certain place for a long time. But, of course, the story is not over. What they do is then say, do what you want with this place. Because as we've already mentioned, you can use it to level your alts, you can use it to gear up all your characters, you can do all that stuff, and that still remains. But what they then do is say, okay, you've finished the main bulk of stuff and you've seen practically everything. You may not have done everything, you're unlikely to have won a duel by then. On several bosses, you won't have ever got it done without getting any vulnerability stacks, so you still have plenty to do in terms of your own personal goals, but that's the point. You then have your own path to go on. And they encourage that as well. So what they then do is say, okay, all that metal you've been earning to rank up, that's now an extra currency you can spend on stuff. You can now spend that on gaining passive buffs for your character to make them even stronger. You want to boost your DPS, you want to boost up your healing, you want to boost up your HP. You can continue to do that. So absolutely nothing you find there is wasted. Nothing. Of all the resources and stuff you gather, nothing is going to be wasted whatsoever. So now you can get this sort of prestige type system where you're going to keep building it up. And if you're passively farming it on alts, remember in FF14, your alt is still the same character. Every single character can play every single job in the game. So even when you go to swap over, you still retain all the benefits of being there originally. Instead of we look towards things that are like account wide. I've done this in one character. Can I have the benefits of this on another character? And often, certainly in World of Warcraft, it's like, no, you must start again. You must get the reputation again. You must start this over again. That doesn't happen in FF14. They say, okay, you already did this. Great. Now you can have the benefits to level up your other character. And not only that, your gear might be weaker on your alt job. So we'll just give you all these extra passive buffs as well. And then while you're gearing that up, we'll give you more and more buffs on top of that as well. Just to make your time more easier. You've got something else to work towards. You can do whatever the hell you want to do, especially farming your relics. Now, this is the big grind of Bozja. Now, your relic is basically a glam. At the time, it was a powerful weapon. But it's essentially now, certainly, it's just a wonderful transmog item that you can farm. And there's one for every single job in the game. This, again, comes down to what you want to do. If you're somebody who's like, I want to level every single job in the game and collect every single relic, Bossier is thousands of hours of content for you, right? It just is. That's just sat there waiting for you. And sure, after a while, you're going to be like, this is just a mindless grind. But yeah, you're doing the same thing over and over again for thousands of hours. Well, that goes all the way back down to, I don't care about any of that stuff. And I got 4 days of really intense content out of it, to the guy who's like, I want to just get the relic for my main job. And therefore, Bossier has a few weeks of content for me. And everybody's going to have this scaling level of, I want to, like, my focus, if I was going back, would be, I want to do the duels. And I will be going back because I want to beat all the duels, because that's like a Mage Tower challenge. So I absolutely want to do that. And that's why I got all these different opinions, which is understandable. Because everybody had a very different experience with it, which is exactly what they wanted. They don't want people to all have the same experience all the way through it and force it down your throat. You make your own road out of this, and it's nothing but a positive as far as I can see. My conclusion here then. For me, Bozja was exactly what I look for from casual content. Now, what I did find out during this is the word casual content is very different in FF14. For me, it means accessibility. It's accessible content. You can do it anytime, any day. You can log in for 5 minutes, 3 hours. It doesn't matter. It's completely there and open, and you can just run in, jump in, and get involved. And then you can drop out. You're going to earn some currency, do some stuff. But casual content in FF14 generally means content that isn't going to take all day. They have more of a time focus on their casual stuff. But ultimately, this was exactly the kind of thing I'm looking for when it comes to a catch-up zone. There's a huge, interesting, engaging bulk of content for you there that's going to take you probably like 40 hours, right? That's all there for everybody, and nobody has to go. That's the important factor is nobody has to do this. If you're not interested at all, it doesn't matter. It makes absolutely no difference to you whatsoever, and you can completely avoid it if you want to. For other people, there's thousands of hours of content here that will continue to be used into the next expansion because it's scaled. If you want to go and level there, you can go and level there, whether there's 3 expansions later down the line. It doesn't matter. If that's your favorite place to be, doesn't make a difference. You can go and do it and do whatever you want to do. And just the fact that they are not afraid to waste, they're not trying, I should say, to waste your goddamn time. It's not about chasing one little reward at the end of a stick, and all the way through it, they might give you some bits and bobs here, but they're going to give it you piecemeal. They're going to gate you off from it. They're going to say, no, you can't do it for like 3 weeks, and now you're going to have to click a load of boxes, and you're going to have to farm the same rares over and over again, and you're going to have to do this and this and this. It's entirely down to everything you do there gives you a bit of everything. How can you argue with content that is constantly giving you extra stuff? That you just like, oh, cool, I've geared up another character passively by doing this other thing. I went there to farm my jewels. While I was doing that, I literally leveled another character, and I also got that gear for that character. And I also did it while being able to make myself super strong while I was there. And I could take that into the raids, and I could be super strong in the raids because it really doesn't matter. This is optional content. It affects nothing to anybody, and you can go and do these things. Almost perfect. almost perfect. There are always tweaks and improvements to be made, but from what I can see, this comparative to what I've certainly dealt with in WoW over the years, this is where you take a leaf from that book and go, yeah, this is how we do it. We take away that idea of forcing players to be there, and look what you find. Pretty damn good. I'll see you again, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.